Do we need another amendment for political equality? Don't we have, in addition to, the Declaration of Independence, which frames the issue so beautifully, we have the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment. Is this the right one? What do you think about this approach?
Well, thanks, Caroline, and thank you for not only moderating this wonderful panel, but for also partnering with us to bring this conversation around the country. Political equality, to my mind, is what this is all about. The reason the right to vote matters is because we're equal citizens, one person, one vote. The reason money and the power of money or the power of corporations is a constitutional conversation is because we do hold these truths to be self-evident, that we're all created equal. And so if our political and governmental structures deny that fundamental truth, that we're all created equal, we have basically departed from what we call the American promise. The fundamental through line starts with the Declaration of Independence, and the whole narrative of American history is trying to make it real that we'll actually be equal citizens in a republic. And Elizabeth mentioned 8 amendments have nullified the Supreme Court's decisions. Each of those was essentially the Supreme Court denied political equality, and the American people said, no, we really actually mean it. We know it's hard, but we're going to try to fulfill that promise that we're all created equal. Michelle Giwando, when we started this conference with a conversation about what went wrong on the Supreme Court, reminded us of this historical perspective that, 3/5 of persons were actually written into the Constitution. Women and African Americans, people without property, were considered outside the political realm. They weren't equal citizens. And all of our progress in this country has been to say that's wrong, we have to be equal citizens. And that doesn't mean equal materially, of course. It means equal political rights so that we can express ourselves and be represented on equal terms. I see this amendment and where we are right now as a classic historical and fundamental example where everything about America is on the line. We're either going to win this debate or we're going to live as unequal people where if you have more money, if you have access to the CEO or to a corporate treasury, if you can rig the game by districting or voting, knocking voters off, that's not only tolerable, it's given blessing by the Supreme Court, or we get back on track and say all of those are wrong. And the reason they're wrong is much more than campaign finance laws or corporate law or Secretary of State's jobs. It's fundamentally wrong because it denies our basic equality. And so those 8 Supreme Court cases were all about that, women getting the right to vote. The post-Civil War amendments that ended slavery, everyone, regardless of race, has a right to vote and equal protection and due process of laws. But it carries all the way forward, including when economic rules were denying political equality. One of our amendments, as recently as the 1960s, abolished the poll tax, an economic barrier to being able to vote on equal terms that, like many of these economic barriers, was used as proxies for race to deny the 15th Amendment right to vote. So we always have to, every American generation almost has to reprove this political equality and concept in amendments, because the Supreme Court, as Elizabeth said, usually doesn't. Brown versus Board of Education is an exception. Usually they have tended to side with economic power and status quo concentrated power against the concept of political equality. And they make no bones about it. The Citizens United case, the line of cases that we are trying to overturn, Chief Justice Roberts actually put it in an oral argument in a case out of Arizona about the public financing system there, put it specifically when he said, this law in Arizona says you're trying to level the playing field. Doesn't that prove that it's unconstitutional? Literally. And so the political equality concept is not even in the balance when this court is weighing campaign finance laws, districting, things like that. And they insist it shouldn't be in the balance, that somehow that violates the First Amendment right of concentrated wealth to overwhelm the rights of other citizens. So this is, to me, I'm so glad to see Congressman McGovern and the other amendments, and Tom Udall on the Senate side, put it into words in this amendment to advance democratic self-government and political equality. That's an instruction for all time to the Supreme Court that they cannot deny political equality in weighing the relative claims as to campaign finance laws and the role of corporations in our society. And the reason I'm optimistic is because this is no harder than any of those others. In fact, in some ways we're well ahead because we have about 90%, 85% support from the American people. And I'm very confident that once again, when the chips are down, we're going to say political equality is the core of the Constitution, and we have to say it again because the court denied it.